Hello and welcome, guys, to today's live stream, to today's underwater video talk. It's great to have you here. This time, actually, on time, not like last month where we had a bit of a technical problem and some issues getting online. This time, it seems to have worked flawlessly, and we are on time and ready to rock the show here this Friday in the underwater video talk. Let's see who's already online. Hopefully, people are not assuming that it's going to be late like last month. Like it was last month and just turned up late. So if you're in the stream, just let me know. Let me know where you're from. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know how your week was, so that we get a bit of an idea who's in the stream here today. And as we are waiting for more people to drop in and join our live stream here, we'll prepare for the topics that we will cover in today's live stream, today's video. So as always, you can also drop your questions in the chat, and I will pick out those questions as soon as I see them or whenever I find them fitting to be answered throughout the stream. The live stream, I will pick them up and try to answer them to the best of my knowledge and capabilities. And should there be any questions that I'm not able to answer, I'm obviously gonna research on them and get back to you guys in another video or in next month live stream with the answer to that question. So we have Juhani in the live stream. Welcome, Juhani. Always great to see you here in the live stream, my friend. I hope Finland is doing well and you are too. I wonder if you've been in the water lately. I imagine that it must be even colder than the temperatures that we have here in Switzerland at the moment. But I know that you are not afraid of the cold waters and actually a fan of cold water diving. So, yeah, curious to hear if you've been in the water lately, because I have to be quite honest, I haven't really been too much in the water lately. Too much other things have happened, and I've just been too busy with a lot of other projects. Right, then we have a mystical dragon here as well. Hello, hello. Great to see you back here on the live stream. Oh, Juhani. Juhani was ice diving last weekend. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. And I guess Finland is the perfect place to do so. So that's good to know. Nice to see. Justin's also here. An underwater photographer, videographer from Trinidad and Tobago. Wow, that's very exotic. Nice to have you here on the live stream. I know if you've been here in the past, I don't really remember that, but it's nice to have you here in the live stream. Welcome. What's the diving like in Trinidad and Tobago? What do you normally, is it like a tropical reef diving? Is there anything specific that this area is famous for? I haven't really been to that area. I haven't really heard much of that area in terms of diving and what the diving is like. So curious, Justin, if you just want to drop one or two sort of phrases as to what the diving is like. Amazing Caribbean diving. Okay, nice. Very, very nice. So I guess you have been in the water just lately as well, since you have that nice Caribbean diving just in front of your doorstep, I guess. Excellent. So who else is in the stream? I see there's a couple more people that have just gotten onto the stream. So guys, let us know where you're from, how you doing. Mystical Dragon got his DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro and working on the setup. Nice. That's a very nice camera. I really, really like the Osmo Action 5 Pro. I think it's one of the best action cameras that's out on the market to date, and it really gives a very, very nice image that is that can be adjusted, manipulated, graded and stuff quite a bit. So I'm actually really liking that camera. Oh, Justin was diving in bimini with the hammerheads. Not bad. I can't wait. We are going to be going to Formula in the Maldives just after we do our underwater videography workshop in April. We'll be spending a couple of days down there diving with the tiger sharks. So I can't wait for that. But the hammerhead in Bimini, that sounds definitely like a very nice experience too. I'm hoping you got a lot of good footage from that trip. Is this actually something that you do regularly, the Bimini part, or is it something that that was like a first for you or a sort of a bucket list thing? We have a hi from the UK. That's interesting. The Maldivian Better from the UK. Nice to have you here on the live stream. Um, Thank you, Mystical Dragon. That is the aim of the videos, to help you guys decide on what camera gear you want to get for filming your underwater adventures. And if that was the case, then that makes me very happy. Kind of proves the sort of the sense of those videos that I'm making, and that makes me very happy. One of first time, beyond epic. Lots of footage. I can imagine. I can imagine. Well, Justin, you know that we are still running that reviewing your underwater films series here on the channel. We're just having a little break again because we just have been too busy with other things, but it's still running. So if you do manage to put something together from that trip, we would love to have a video of that Bimini Hammerhead trip on our channel to review for everyone to see. If you want to do that, feel free to reach out to me and send me that clip once it's finished, and I'll make sure that we can review it within the series. All right. So, Justin, you can basically just send me a email to contact. I'll just write it in the chat. Contact at matthiaslebo.com, and here we go. And basically just put the link to your uploaded video in there and give us a little bit of background information, in particular about the camera that you've used, the location where it was filmed, and anything else that might be useful for us in reviewing the submission. And then we'll pick it up when we start reviewing submissions again, which should be in a couple weeks' time. And then I'll let you know when it's reviewed and when it will be published here on the channel. So we have Home Automated in the channel here as well, who's buying a dive cylinder compressor next week. Not bad. So you'll be able to fill your tanks yourself. That is not bad. How do you guys actually do this? Like if you're diving in like your home areas, do you normally go to dive shops to fill up your tanks? Do you have your own compressors like Home Automated is doing, or is getting the setup now? Here in Switzerland, it's quite normal to have like sort of self checkout tank filling stations where you sort of pre-register with a dive shop. You get like a little badge, like credit card basically, and then you can just like, regardless of the opening hours of the dive shop, it's got a filling station that can be accessed from the outside. So with the badge, you unlock that and you just fill up your tank, and it just charges you a couple of bucks for the tank, the air fill from like the credit that you have on that card. And that's a really easy way to refill your tanks because you're not really bound to opening hours of dive shops and stuff. You can just do it whenever you want and whenever you're either on your way to a dive site for a dive or on the way back, so you can refill it for the next time. So that's something quite convenient that we have here. Excellent. We have John in the chat or in the stream again. Hello, John. It's great to see you here. And we've got Rebecca. You're not late at all, Rebecca. We have really just started and are doing a little bit of chit-chatting and small talk here while we're waiting for more people to join the chat and the stream. Obviously, I know that last week or last month, I better say, I was having all those technical difficulties, and it kept dragging on before we were able to start. So I just want to give people a chance to jump on first before we get into the actual topic this time. So let me just pick up one more question and then we'll kind of get started with today's topic. Today we'll be talking about wide angle, shooting wide angle, filming wide angle underwater. And I'm just going to pass on a couple of tips to you guys. I've prepared a small, tiny little presentation. I'm just passing on a couple of tips to you as to how to make sure that you get the best possible wide angle shots that you can when you're filming your next underwater adventure. But before we get into that, let me just pick up that one last question from the Maldivian adventure. Still undecided on the next camera purchase. Outdated GoPro 3. Yeah, I confirm that's quite outdated. That is a fairly old GoPro. Probably still does the job and is still recording video as it used to. Not sure whether to go with a Sea Life Micro 3 with attached light or the Olympus TG7 or such as a new action cam. Good question. I have used the Sea Life Micro cameras, but I think it was the Sea Life Micro 1 or 2.0. It was an old version, and they're okay. The thing with these cameras, I found at least the version that I was trying, because it's like one piece, and you can't really take anything off. I think I couldn't even take out the battery. It was like built like inside the camera. So so if the battery was low or was out of juice, I couldn't just swap it with a new battery. I had to recharge the camera, which was a bit of a bummer. I didn't really like that. The image quality was okay-ish. Obviously, with Sea Life, you get all the different options with different wet lenses that you can attach to the system. I think that goes with the Micro 3 as well. And then the TG7 is a really nice and capable camera, especially in the sort of macro section. The TG series is known for its macro capabilities, being just a really good camera in terms of getting tech sharp, really good looking macro shots. I'm not sure if the TG7 has image stabilization. That was a big thing with the TG5 and 6. They didn't have that or don't have that. And that made it really difficult to use it on macro subjects without the integration or the use of a tripod. So a tripod was kind of necessary to be able to get stable shots with them, because they didn't have any image stabilization. If the 7, and I'm not sure about that, that needs to be checked up. If the 7 has image stabilization, even better. If it doesn't, then you just need to be aware of that that fact and the workaround by using tripods to get more stable footage. And then again, a TG6 or 7 in that case can also be upgraded by using different wet lenses on the TG7 to make it more versatile in terms of getting a wider field of view for really nice wide angle shots, or make it even better in the macro compartment, where it's already really good in that compartment, to be quite honest. Right, I hope that answers your question there a little bit. Action cams, there's plenty of different action cams on the market. My favorite at this stage is probably the DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro. I think it's I just think it delivers the best results underwater connection. So hopefully that has been resolved. If any of you guys can just let me know in the chat if that is the case and I am kind of unfrozen again, and you can hear and see me properly. All right, so it seems like I'm back. Thank you, Mystical Dragon. Thank you, Maldivian Badger, for the confirmation. And Maldivian Badger, sorry that you missed part of my answer to your question before. I was basically saying that both the TG7 and the Sea Life Micro 3 have the advantage of being able to be upgradable or upgraded with wet lenses and stuff. Personally, I would probably go for the TG7. I just think it's a more complete system and more versatile than the Sea Life camera. And if you want to go with action cams, then the Osmo Action V Pro is my favorite there. I think it's the best action camera at the moment for the use underwater. Right, okay, so let's not waste any more time and let's get into that little presentation that I have prepared for you guys. I'm just gonna open that now for you. Let me just find that tab. And then I'll open that for you. Here we are. All right. So you should be seeing this now. Let me just see if I can actually do that full screen. I probably can. Let me see. Sorry, guys. Here. So you should see this full screen and now. So I want to talk to you about how to capture a stunning wide angle shot. Just briefly, it's not going to be a long presentation, it's only a couple of minutes. I've just got 5 points prepared for you that I want to pass on to you so that you can make your life a little easier, capture these nice wide angle shots. So first point would be to use a wide lens, a lens as wide as possible. It's quite an obvious point, but the reason behind it is a little more complicated. It's not just you want a wide lens so you can cover everything, but you want to have a wide lens as wide as possible simply because underwater, with all the particles, the water itself and everything that is in between your lens and your subject, you want to get as close to your subject, even if you're trying to capture wide angle shots. So getting close is not limited to shooting sort of mid shots and close-ups, but you also want to get very close to your subject when you're shooting wide angle. And that means that you need a lens that can cover a wider field of view. Now, typically you want to have at least 25 millimeters focal length equivalent in a full frame or on a full frame sensor. Now, I have on my Red Komodo, I shoot usually with when I do wide angle shots with a 15 to 35 millimeter lens, and the 15 millimeter on that end, it is because the Komodo is a Super 35 sensor, so it equals to about 22, 23 millimeters full frame equivalent. So that's kind of the narrowest you want to have, and if you can go wider, that's better. But be careful if you start going into the fisheye kind of lenses, which can go all the way to 8, 10, 11 millimeters. The problem there is that the image gets distorted on the corners, the edges, and just doesn't really look very natural. It can still be a nice look, and it can still be something desirable to do, but it's just not really. It just doesn't look very natural if you go overboard with the width of your view. So be just a little careful there. But that's the first tip there. Go with a wide lens as wide as possible. That's also why on the action cameras and stuff, you always try to use the wider lenses on the setting, simply so that you can get closer, minimize any disturbance, any objects, anything that's in between yourself and the subject, so that you can get a clearer, better, nicer view. Also, if you're using lights, the less distance between yourself, the lights, and your subject, the more effect these lights are going to have on your subject, and the nicer the image is going to turn out. We'll go into the second point right away, and the second point is to keep the sun behind you at all times if you can. Alternatively, or as an addition, bring some artificial light with you. Now, you can see on the image that you see on the right-hand side there of the manta ray, the light is actually coming in this situation is coming like, or it's hitting the manta right in the face. So the light is coming from the back, from where I'm actually hovering over the reef, over the table corals there. And that's kind of what you want to have when you're shooting wide angle shots, especially in shallow water where the light doesn't really make a big difference. Use that sunlight as like a huge underwater video light, huge natural underwater video light that helps you light up your subject, especially in shallow water where it still has a rather big effect. It's going to be very difficult if you're trying to shoot against the light, because then you will have to outpower the sunlight. This can work in deeper waters, but if you're very shallow, you need a lot of power on your underwater video lights to be able to do that. And it's more likely than not that you will not be able to outpower the sun, and your subject will still not be properly lit. The background will be too bright, the subject will be too dark, and it is not going to be achieving a very pleasing looking image that way. So this is one of the things that I always teach. The first thing when you get to a dive site, to a scene, and you're thinking about starting to capture something, always look around first. Make sure you're aware of the position of the sun, and you can adjust your position accordingly, and always try to be between your subject that you're filming and the sun. So your subject, the sun, and you should be in between, so that you have actually that sun shining over your shoulder and onto your object, onto your subject, so that way you get the nicest possible lighting situation, natural lighting situation. Number 3 is to use manual white balance, something that is not possible with every camera. I'm very aware of that, but if your camera gives you that option to use manual white balance, I would always do so, because it is just gonna produce a overall nicer looking image. Meaning that the foreground and the background are just gonna be better. They're going to fit better together, and it's going to make it a more natural looking image. If you don't do that, if you leave the white balance up to your camera's algorithm, the camera doesn't know that you're underwater, so it is very likely not going to compensate for the lost red color that happens when we go underwater, and the results are going to be less than ideal. Now, there's different ways how you can do that. You can either use like a white slate to do your manual white balance. You can use the sand if that's available in the area that you're diving. You can use anything gray really to get that done. And depending on what camera you're using, there's going to be different ways how to actually set the manual white balance. Now, something that can also be very useful is it's like a color checker. This is the color checker. Let me just get out here and make the image a little bigger, so you can actually see what I'm showing. This is Kelden's color checker, and this is something that I've been lately using a lot as a reference to color grade my footage. Now, it comes with a gray slate on the back side as well, so you can use that one to actually do your manual white balance underwater. But you can also, once you've done your manual white balance, then turn it around and hold this part into the frame as you've started filming already. So you start recording, and then you position yourself in the way that you want to be and hold this in the frame. Now, this will give you, recording this sort of color pattern or these different colors will give you a very good way of then actually grading and color correcting the footage in post-production, because on here you have the typical colors that you can then use to help you grade and color correct your image much better and easier in post-production. Right, so that's something that I have been using quite a lot lately, and I really enjoy using that in addition to doing your manual white balance on your wide angle shots. You don't really have to do that on close-up macro shots, specifically because you're going to be using lights there, and then it's kind of, the camera can handle that when it gets proper lighting, but without that it doesn't really work that well. So let's get back into the presentation. Right. So sorry, we had the manual white balance. As I said, it's just going to give you a really better, more uniform, natural looking image if you do go that extra road of doing the manual white balance on your shots underwater, specifically on the wide angle shots. Looking at point number 4, we talk about aperture. I suggest, it's my recommendation for everyone, if you can control your aperture manually. Again, not possible on old cameras. On old cameras, if you use action cams, that's not possible. On certain cameras, I don't think that like the Sea Life Micro is capable of having the aperture adjusted. Like it's not really adjustable on certain smartphones, or most of the smartphones it's not adjustable. But if it is, like on compact cameras, on smaller mirrorless cameras, then I would highly recommend that you set that aperture when you're shooting wide angle to f8.0 or higher, so that you can actually get a larger depth of field, meaning that more of the area that you're filming depth-wise is going to be in focus. If you keep that aperture open too wide, it's going to be really difficult to have like the entire object in focus. Like let's imagine a turtle that swims towards you, and you ideally want to have the whole turtle in focus, from like the head to like the back legs and the tail. And that is probably not going to happen if you start filming with like f2.8 or f3.5 or something like that. So drop it down to close it down to f8.0 or higher, and that should give you a much easier way to get your subject properly in focus, and also keep it in focus, because the autofocus is going to have an easier task and an easier life keeping the object in focus if the field the depth of field is not too shallow. So that's point number 4 there. And then number 5, last one, is to take some time to fine tune the buoyancy, not just of yourself, but also of your underwater camera rig. And there's different ways how you can do this. There's float arms, there's attachments that add extra flotation to your underwater camera rig, so that you can get your camera as neutrally buoyant as possible. It doesn't always have to be neutrally buoyant. I don't mind like a smartphone in a diaphragm housing. I don't mind if that has a slight negative tendency to it. But if I'm working with larger cameras or cameras that don't have a very good stabilization integrated into them, then it just makes it easier for you to capture smooth, good-looking shots if the system is as neutrally buoyant as possible. It also makes it easier to maneuver the equipment, the rig underwater. Now, let me just find it. Let me just come back here to you. One of the float arms that I really like is this one here. This is from Kraken, or WeFine as we call it here in Europe. Same brand, just different names. And this is an adjustable float arm. And what it does, basically, it's got a little sort of vent here on one side, and it's filled with air. And once you get underwater, you can open that vent a little bit by pressing here and just letting some water dribble into that hollow space here, obviously changing the flotation of the device itself, of the float arm itself, making it sink a little more. So if you're too positively buoyant, you can adjust that underwater to get your rig perfectly neutrally buoyant. I found that to be a really easy and good way, straightforward way to get the buoyancy just sorted out on like a first dive of a trip, and then you can just keep the water in there as it has been perfected for your setup, and don't change it for the rest of the trip, and you'll always have perfectly buoyant underwater camera rig that way. For me, it's very comfortable because if I change from like a wide angle to a macro setup, which changes the flotation capabilities of my camera or characteristics, I can still use the same flotation arms, and I can just adjust them. So I don't have to carry multiples of these around. I already have too much gear with me, so not having to carry too much of that stuff with me is actually quite a nice extra bonus. The high quality, I've been using these ones for probably 5 or 6 years already, and they're still going strong. They're a little pricey, I agree on that, but they are actually really, really good addition to any underwater camera rig. I have them as a little compensation for my video lights that I'm attaching to my camera system, and it works actually quite nicely. Right. So I just wanted to go back to the presentation. Oh, here we go. Sorry, guys. All right. And obviously, your personal buoyancy also plays a big role in how stable your footage is going to be. Especially with wide angle shots, I like it a lot when you add a little movement to wide angle shots, so that they're not too stationary, but you have like a little, like a dolly in or a dolly out, or like a sideways movement, a tilt up or tilt down. It just makes the shots a lot more dynamic. I really enjoy that. But for these type of shots to produce them fluently and well looking, you really need to be perfectly buoyant yourself and have a rather well balanced rig underwater, so that it doesn't end up being too shaky. Of course, you can still do some post-production stabilization and stuff on it, but it's always easier if you get it as good as possible in the first place. Just makes things easier than in post-production for you. All right. So let me just come out of this. We'll stop the sharing. Right. So that was the little presentation that I had prepared for you. Let me see what has happened in the chat in the meantime. If you guys have any questions to what I was just talking about, feel free to drop them down in the the chat section, and I'll be going through them in a minute. It was and another for the accessories. A lot of it was so I can film work on the river, and that's great, Mystical Dragon. I think that this has been a good purchase for you. I think that you're going to be having a lot of fun and good results with the Osmo Action 5 Pro. Yeah, sorry, Maldivian Badger, that you have to go back to work. It looks like you're working in first help. So that's a very important field of work, and I hope that nothing has happened and you have to run off quickly. But of course, work is prioritized, and thank you anyways for having taken the time to be here with us. John is asking if there is any tips for protecting big wide angle lenses in the water, surging water and coral don't mix well. That is very true. I can tell you this, John, the way I usually work is that I try to keep the neoprene cover on the dome port until I'm actually in the water. So I don't really like to have it taken off by the people on the boat and then handing me the camera down, because that's, in my experience, also one of the situations where the most damage gets done to dome ports by people handing them down into the water to you who are not very experienced with handling larger camera systems or camera systems in general. So I will always keep it on, and then depending on what kind of neoprene cover you have, some have little holes, so you can just slide it through your or slide your arm through those holes and keep the neoprene cover there, or you just put it in like your BCD pocket or something like that, or have it clipped off to BCD somewhere. There's different ways how you can do this. And then if you actually do end up in a surge on your dive, then I would put that neoprene cover back on, because realistically, being realistic, you're not going to be filming probably in that situation. So having that neoprene cover back on your dome port is probably the smarter choice. So gives you a little bit more protection. The other thing is also that you can do, depending on what your BCD harness situation is like, you can turn your camera around so that the dome port is facing you if you're in a situation like that. And of course, not if you have like sharp metal things hanging off your BCD in the chest area, but if you don't have that, you can turn it around and press it against the soft neoprene of your wetsuit, and give it some extra protection that way. So that's probably those are probably the tips that I can give you in regards to protecting dome ports. Then we have Justin with a question. He shoots with a Nikon D850 Nauticam housing with all the bits and bobs. I've been shooting a lot more video over the last year or so. I'm ready for an external monitor. I have looked at your video on external monitors. There are quite a few options on the market now, and yes, I want to record. Yeah, okay. Is there any specific option that you're looking at, Justin, in terms of model and stuff? I have had some really good experiences with the Ninja V or Ninja 5, whatever you want to call it, the Atomus Ninja V. It's a small, compact, not too heavy monitor, and Nauticam is making a housing for it. It works quite well as a monitor. It is bright enough. It is not just a monitor, but also a recorder. Now, with that monitor, I was using my Panasonic GH5 in the past, and together with the GH5S, I was even able to record ProRes RAW on the monitor, on SSDs that you just slide into the monitor and use them as recording media. And that has worked quite well. Keep in mind, the ProRes RAW files are huge, like literally incredibly big. But yeah, it's a nice monitor. It's, as I said, the thing is, it's bright enough, it's easy to use. It doesn't have too many functions, which I find a plus, because I want to have a monitor underwater that is just doing the most basic things, but it does it well. And I think that's what the Ninja V does. It has a lot of extra features, but you can kind of not use them or disable them and just stick to the basics, and that has always worked quite well for me. So I can recommend the Ninja V. I think it's a good monitor. Yeah, and I'm not sure what kind of connection the D850 has, if it's a micro USB port or a full-size USB. You also need to, because depending on the connection type, it's going to be different signals that the camera can output to the monitor, and different qualities of signals. So you might not be able then to record any ProRes RAW footage onto the recorder. And I have actually used it quite a bit also as a recorder, not just a monitor, because as I was saying, it just gave me extra recording options that the GH5 and GH5S weren't giving me at that time, and the recorder was doing so. And I actually found it quite handy to not hold the camera down on the camera handles, but much rather just hold the monitor in my hands, and I was able to get lower down with the camera, kind of look down onto the monitor from a higher perspective, and film that way. And then you have the record button on the monitor itself, so you don't have to reach down to the camera to press record. You can do that on the monitor itself. And I used to work like that quite a bit, and found that to be quite practical for the things that I did. So yeah, I can recommend the Ninja V. And I think that a monitor, if you've come to a certain level of your underwater video skills and to a certain part in like the things you do, I think that a monitor is highly beneficial in the ways that it's going to help you frame your image better. It's going to help you just get the shots in a more convenient way, rather than having to squash behind your little viewfinder or the screen. It's just more convenient. But yeah. So I hope that answers your question there, Justin. Thank you, Mystical Dragon, for the little compliment there. I love that you're enjoying the content and finding it helpful. Um, yeah, well, one day, you never know, one day you might get a red housing yourself. Well, it kind of was a sort of a surprise to myself that I got that housing when I did. I wasn't really that wasn't really something that I planned for a long time, but then the opportunity just came along, and I just jumped at it, and I have never looked back. It's really a different type of filming with these bigger cameras, but then again, I don't think it's for everyone. You really have to have a reason to go that way. Otherwise, I don't think the financial investment makes sense if you're not doing it at least semi-professionally or earning at least a little bit of money with your underwater videography. Christoph, welcome. A new face here, or new name here in the chat. I was wondering if you have any experience or heard good things about the Sony 12 to 24 G Master behind a dome. I would like to have a really wide rectilinear option, but there are no reviews online. I have to disappoint you there, Christoph. I am not very familiar with the Sony optics simply because I haven't used Sony cameras in years, literally in years. So I'm assuming that the G Master lenses are high quality lenses from what I've heard and know. And the 12 to 24 millimeter. Help me out here. Is this full frame? Is this 12 millimeter full frame? In that case, it would be a very wide angle lens, which can be very useful, definitely. 12-24. Keep in mind that 12-24 is not. It's really just a wide angle lens in that sense. You don't really get much of a zoom function or sort of a closer up function in that lens at all. It's really purely wide angle. With the 15 to 35 that I'm using, the Canon. With 35, at least you sort of get a kind of a mid shot, and specifically if you're using it on a Super 35 sensor like the Red Komodo sensor is. On there, it turns out to be like a 50 mil, so you get like a closer shot for useful for wildlife. If you want to do portraits of wildlife and stuff, that can be quite handy. And then on the wider end, 15, which ends up to be 22, 23, you get in the wider area. But yeah, 12 to 24 is really, really wide. I can't really say how sharp it is in the corners and how well it works with that 230 mil dome. Is the dome a Nauticam dome? Is that the one that you're referring to? If it is, then I think it's going to be sharp if the lens itself is sharp, because Nauticam is actually quite well known to produce really high quality optics. Definitely, if there's two different dome versions, definitely go for the glass one, not for the acrylic one. The glass one's going to be a lot sharper. It's going to give you a lot better optical performance than the acrylic one. Yes, it's going to be more expensive, but that's what you're paying for, the higher optical performance with such a glass port. I hope that at least answers your question a little bit. I know I can't really answer it entirely simply because I don't have any experience with that lens. Not on land, and certainly not underwater. But from like the understanding that I have, yeah, I don't see why this should not be a good combination and why this should not be a good working pair. Rebecca is asking, are we thinking about alternatives to carrying the color card? Printed on fins would be ideal. Dive skin, of course, even a dome port cover. Yeah, why not? I mean, sure, you can print that on your fins. Why not? Also, I know a lot of divers, a lot of photographers actually, who specifically chose white fins so they can use their fins as a white or gray slate when they do their manual white balancing. That can be an option. I don't really know with the dome port cover if you put like the card on there, because it's not stable, it's soft. I don't know how well you'll be able to actually place that in front of your camera and get the manual white balance sorted that way. And I know it's a bit of a hassle having to carry something else with you on the dive, but these things have nowadays shrunk down to a fairly small size and are not really taking up that much space. But fins, white fins usually work quite well. One important thing that I didn't say before, I forgot to mention that, is when you do your manual white balance, always try to actually perform the manual white balance in the same position and pointing the same direction as you will be when you take your actual shot. And this makes sense when you think about it this way. If you have the sun behind you and you do the white balance pointing your camera away from the sun, and then you turn around because this other way is where your subject is, and you want to take a shot that way, the light influence is going to be completely different from that first direction where you did the manual white balance to the actual shot that you're taking. So this is something also important. I'll always try to stay in that position and try to get it as close to the same position as you will be taking when you take the actual shot. And that can be sometimes a challenge with the fins, getting them in the same position as you will be when you point the camera onto your subject. Just an extra little thing to think about. Rebecca. Yeah, of course. Yeah, the dive covers probably works quite well. You're right. I don't have one here right now. I should have one here, but I don't. Let me see. No, sorry, it's all packed up somewhere. I don't have one to grab right now. But yeah, of course, that cover is a bit harder. That could potentially work, and maybe that's actually something that I can pass on to Divefolk. Maybe they can, on their covers, maybe they can imprint like a gray slate on the back so people can use it to do manual white balancing. That's actually not a bad idea. I will pass that on to Divefolk. Thank you, Rebecca, for that idea, and we'll see if they can put it on there. Right, let's move on. We have a couple more comments, questions there. I made my own snoot using a silicone collapsible funnel. It fits over my light. It works good. Excellent. Homemade, automated. That sounds great. Yeah, snoots can be done do it yourself quite easily. And in the end, it's really all about getting that light funneled and just blacking out the surroundings and just having like a smaller section lit up. Usually with the snoots that you can buy from like video light manufacturers, what they basically do, they have like a little module in there, like a selection or a stacking of lenses that will kind of funnel and intensify your light beam of the video light. So if you have like a 2000 lumen video light going through that little extra unit that you attach on the front of your light to make it into a snoot, will just intensify the light output and make it stronger, which you kind of want to have when you're snooting, because you want to have a light as intense as possible so you can close the aperture as much as possible and sort of lower down the exposure of your image so that everything around it gets dark and it's really just the object, the thing that you're filming, that gets lit up with the small light that you're outputting through the snoot. Especially when doing that during daytime, because then you really have to dial down the exposure and crank up close down the aperture so that everything gets really dark, and then you need a lot of light to light up the actual thing that you're trying to record. But yeah, definitely, why not? There's a lot of things that can be done yourself, and that you can help yourself with, being a little creative in that way. Yeah, Christoph, I couldn't really tell you. I mean, I don't know if that combination is really going to be if there's not going to be any vignetting or anything in the corners. But on the Nauticam side, they have like a port chart, like a system where you can check which lens is compatible with what port. And if it actually states on there that that lens is compatible with that port, with the dome port, then it shouldn't really have any optical discrepancies. It should be working well. Obviously, the ideal solution would be if you have like an underwater camera store somewhere close to you, to go, who's ideally a Nauticam dealer, go and see if they have that dome there. Maybe they have that lens there as well, and then just check it out and see if it really works and gives you the results that you want. That's usually the best way to do so. But I know it's not always possible because not everyone has an underwater camera store right in their neighborhood. All right. Bye-bye, John. Thanks for being here. Well, next time I will see or talk to you. It's probably going to be on the Maldives, in the Maldives. Excellent. Home Automated asks, what's the difference between a wet lens and a normal lens? A wet lens basically means that it's swappable underwater, so that there is water in between the port of your underwater housing and the lens when it attaches to that port. That's the thing. So you need to have like a layer of water in between the port and the lens for the lens to properly function. And that also means that it is swappable underwater. So with wet lenses, typically on like compact and mirrorless cameras, you can swap them underwater. So if you have like a TG6 and you have like a wide angle conversion lens and you have like a macro lens, you can swap those underwater. So you can, in the same dive, you can take wide angle shots of the reef, and then you can take your macro shots using a dedicated macro lens of, I know, the little shrimp or the nudibranch or whatever it is that you found on that reef. And a normal lens is basically a lens that gets attached to the camera body and then a port, and then it gets sealed inside a housing with a port. So you can't really change that underwater. It's something that you do before you go into dive. And on these systems, you have to decide before you go into the water whether you're going to be filming wide angle or macro on that dive. And according to what you're planning, you'll be choosing the lens and the port to go with it. So that's kind of the difference there. Can you get a white balance of a white pointer? What is a white pointer, Home Automated? What do you mean exactly by that? I'm not quite understanding that question, and maybe I'm just thinking too far. But if you can give me a little tip there, what exactly you mean by a white pointer, I'll be happy to try to answer that for you. Rebecca says wide angle in water with sediment. I am quick to just turn off my light and accept natural light. Are there other angle options to address this? The turning off the lights is actually a very good idea there, Rebecca, to just make sure that you don't get too much, or that you don't get backscatter on your shots. What you can do or try to do is have your body and use them as sort of a off-camera light. So have them as a light assistant, and if you're diving in buddy pairs, you can obviously help each other out. So for one shot, I do the lighting for you, and then on the next shot, you do the lighting for me, so that everyone can get their turn in capturing the shot. Because the thing is that the further away you go in terms of the angle and also the distance that you go away from the subject, the less backscatter you're gonna get. The worst is if you have your lights very close to your camera, to the camera's lens. That's where you're going to get the most backscatter. If you move it further out, it's going to get better and better. But at one point, your arms are just going to get that not long enough. So handing your light or using your dive buddy's light as an off-camera light can help by having them positioned in a way where the light is reflecting as little as possible of the sediment and still giving you to a certain degree some extra light into the scene. But the easiest way, as you correctly said, Rebecca, is just to turn the lights off and use natural light, or also dim your lights. You know, you don't have to have your lights on at full power. You can also dim those lights, and therefore you will get less reflection of the sediment and the particles in the water as well. I hope that helps and answers your question there, Rebecca. Any advice on, oh, Jory is in the live stream. Welcome, welcome. Nice to see you. Any advice on starting with macro? Have a Sony a7 III in Nauticam housing, but a bit lost in the Nauticam port charts. You have choices going from 50mm to 105. Yes. Good question, Jory. Most people, what is this? Most people, when it comes to macro, work with a 60mm or 100mm. These are kind of, like, from my experience and what I've seen in the field, these are kind of the two standard focal lengths for macro underwater, 60 or 100. I have not really used 60 very often because I find it not enough for macro. I have used 100mm when I was shooting macro, and I found that was giving me really nice results in terms of how close I was able to get to stuff, how magnified the stuff would be that I was filming, and also the bokeh that I was getting with a 100mm telephoto lens or macro lens. Macro lens, I'd say. It's not a telephoto, it's a macro lens. So with the Sony system, again, I'm not too familiar on the lenses that are available for that system and what a good macro lens is for the Sony system. Sigma lenses are great. I love Sigma lenses. I've had a couple of Sigma lenses right now on, like, the camera that is recording this live stream. I've got a Sigma lens on there, a Sigma Art, which I really like. I think it's 18 to 35 that is on there right now. It's a 35mm. So the 105 might be a good choice. I think 50 is a little, it's just not enough for macro, especially if you're doing like the smaller stuff, because then you definitely need to start working with extra diopters that you place in front of the lens to be able to get like a what I call a proper macro shot. Otherwise, it's like, for me, a close-up shot. Yeah. Hope that answers your question a little bit there, Jory. You say also that you started with the current setup and a CMC1. What was your default port? What is the lens that you're using with your default port? Because yeah, I don't think that diopter, that lens or add-on is usable on any port. I think it has to actually be at least some sort of a macro port to be properly working. Yep. Again, I think a good option here is to go and check out the port chart on Nauticam's website, because it will actually tell you which component of their system works best or is compatible with other components from their system and will give you good results. So that's probably a good idea. Oh, okay, I understand now, Jory. Yeah, that probably doesn't work. That probably won't work, as you, I think, have found out yourself. But yeah, I would go on for macro. I would go on the sort of the higher focal length, so 100, 105, if that's what Sony is or Sigma in that case is offering, then I would probably go with that rather than a 50mm to kind of sum that up. Oh, okay. Home automated. I get you, joke now. A wide tip shark. Yeah, you can probably use a wide tip shark to do a manual light balance as well. if you can get close enough so that it covers most of your frame. That's probably a challenge for another day, but I think that is doable. Yes. And then we have Johanni giving some input to Christoph's questions from before. He has used a Canon 11 to 24 with Naughty Cam 250 millimeter dome, and even the it did get a little vignetting. If you want to have best image quality with wide angle, you need to use wet lenses. Okay. So there you go, Christoph. Thank you, Johanni, for sharing your experience with that lens that Christoph was mentioning before. So apparently, even on the 250 millimeter dome, you still get some slight vignetting on the side. But I guess that Nauticam does have some ways, like WWL or something, that can be used to help with that vignetting and make it work better. All right, look at that. Christoph and Johanni are getting into technical stuff now. Yeah, all right. Maybe, Christoph, it's really a little compromise that one have to do. And maybe there is not the perfect setup for that, at least not at the moment. Right. But yeah. Anyways, Johanni, thank you for sharing your experience and giving input to the conversation here. Right. Okay. So we have passed the hour on our live stream today, and that kind of is the point for me to throw into the chat whether or not there's any more questions that we can talk about and that I might be able to answer for you today. If that might not be the case, then we'll kind of slowly move towards the end of this live stream. As always, it's been great having you guys here in the chat with me and on this live stream. I hope I was able to provide some value, give a little bit of insight, and answer some of the questions that you guys have in regards to underwater video, underwater filmmaking, underwater videography, and all the fun things that we like to do when we submerge and enjoy our underwater adventures. Right, we'll give it a couple more minutes to see if any more questions pop up in the chat. Other than that, there's not really much more to say for me than to wish you a nice and good weekend. Hopefully a weekend that will bring you in the water. It won't be the case for me this weekend, unfortunately. I'll have to stay dry. Got some other obligations that I need to follow this weekend. But, I've got that Maldives trip coming up in just about 5 weeks from now. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm already in the planning for trips for 2026. As it looks now, there is going to be a trip to the Philippines in April 2026. We'll be doing a split or a combination trip where we'll be spending little more than half of the trip probably in Darwin, doing sort of more muck diving and critter diving and small stuff. Apo Island as well, which is wide angle and nice pretty corals, but it's mostly going to be sort of muck and small stuff. And then in the second part of the trip, we'll be going to Malapascua and we'll be doing dedicated thresher shark dives for a couple of days up there. So that's going to be a combination trip that will come up and that we'll do in probably in April 2026. I'm just waiting for the confirmation of the resort and tour at the dive center. And as soon as I've got that, I will come out with the publication for that trip, hopefully before too long. Okay. Yep. Thank you, Rebecca, for that input. Wide angle tips and tricks, Manta tips and tricks. Why not? That's actually a nice idea. You know what, Rebecca? I'll do a video on tips to film mantas. and it will be published before our trip to the Maldives. How about that? So you have something to study in preparation for the trip to the Maldives, where we will most definitely, well, I can't really say that, but most likely, very likely, 99.9% certainty, we will see mentors. So I will make sure to create that video. I've got another video in the line for next Tuesday, and then probably another one, another one for the Tuesday after. But then, so Tuesday in 2 weeks' time, I think might be a good time for that video that you're suggesting. Right. So I've noted that down, and I will produce that video for you, so you have something to study up before our trip to the Maldives. Right. Okay. So in that case, guys, it doesn't seem to have any more questions coming in. Thank you very much for your time and for being here. As always, it's been a pleasure being able to talk to you about what is my absolute passion, capturing the underwater world, and sharing that experience with people that are not as lucky as we are to go underwater and experience that ourselves. Yeah, it always a little difficult for me to end these live streams because I never know how to end them, and I'm always kind of on the wait to see if any more questions come in. And as I'm talking, there is another comment coming in. My lens and filters are external and screw on like a normal camera in the air gap between lens and filter. Do I need it airtight or can it be wet and still work? My lens and filters are external and screw on. Well, if they are external and screw on, then you do want to have water in between those, the elements in between the lens and the port itself. Specifically, yeah, you do want to have water in there. You want to have it filled with water, because if you don't open it up underwater and let water in there, what might happen is that a little bit of water might dribble in there, and then you'll have like these weird bubble formations, half water, half air in that area between the lens and the filter, or the camera and the lens. And that is just going to destroy your image, because it's going to make it impossible for the camera to focus, because now it's going to have a focal point right on the lens, and obviously a focal point somewhere in the distance where your subject actually is, and it's not going to know where to focus if you're doing autofocus. So yeah, definitely whenever you have lenses, filters that screw on or attach on the outside of the housing, you always want to have them flooded, because you're not flooding the housing, you're just flooding that middle part in between the port and the lens or the filter, and that should always have water in there if that's the way it's set up. Hope that answers your question there. No worries, Johanni. My pleasure. Thank you for your valuable input and for having made it to the live stream today. Thank you to everyone for having made it to the live stream and for having been here. And I am gonna end it now. I'm wishing you a awesome, beautiful weekend, and I look forward to seeing you back in one of my videos very soon. The next live stream will be on the last Friday of the month of March, which, let me check. I don't even know what that is. I haven't set that up yet. It will be on March 28th. 28th of March is going to be our next live stream, and shortly after that I will pack my bags and fly to the Maldives with our group for our upcoming underwater video workshop, and I'm very excited about that. So we're probably going to be talking a little bit about that trip and about I don't know, probably about Maldivian diving, because I'm just going to be in the mood to talk about how cool the diving is in the Maldives. So we're probably going to be talking a little bit about that. Yeah, I'll definitely let you know what the exact topic is going to be, but it's going to be somewhere along these lines. Cool. Excellent. So once again, guys, have a great weekend. Keep capturing all your amazing underwater adventures, and I will see you in the next video live stream or on the next video workshops. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.